Okay. Is this one? Yes. Right. Can you guys see my screen? And is it big enough?
Yes, maybe a bit bigger. Maybe.
A bit bigger still. Okay. I surely won't need my reading glasses then, from my side.
Okay, better now. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So basically, the agenda for today would be a sort of a review of the homework. Where did you run into issues? Then from the pull requests I've seen, I've prepared some explanations. There's Mohammed. I've prepared some explanations to go a bit deeper into the issues I've seen with the homework, and then we'll go through some, or I'm going to ask you which topics did you learn this week for the week 2 topics. Then I have some examples for async and await, and I want to do this refactoring again that I did last week with the catwalk, where we convert promises into async await, just because it's the topic for now for this week. Do some an exercise or an example with fetch. Briefly discuss a course which you may run into, and look at JSON. So that's all sort of like theory that I will do before the break that I planned at the 1:15. And then at the second part, just like we did last week, we'll go through the questions and answers. We'll tackle the questions first that from the people present in this online meeting, and if we have time left, we can look at the other questions that Yash will do with his other group. Does that make sense? Is that clear?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So my first question would be, what did you think of the homework? Was it easy? Was it difficult? What questions do you still have, or unclarities or whatever? Who wants to take this up?
Yeah, the most difficult thing was to answer the questions, to explain how promise all works, and also the catch thing, because if I didn't want to copy something theoretically, I can understand, I think, why it's going like this, but I can't find words to explain it.
All right.
So I tried 2 times now. I still waiting for a review for the second time, but I still didn't. I still don't feel it's going well.
Okay, you're not confident about your answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I saw that in a lot of homework that answering these questions or explaining what was happening was quite a few people had difficulties with that, I think. Any other things that you want to bring up with respect to the homework? Anyone else?
For me, I have a question, Jim. For exercise 4, there was a function at the beginning. At first, I returned array of promises, and after that, I called promise.all, and inside it, as a parameter, array of promises. But for your solution, you return promise.all inside the function. So what is the difference?
Okay, yes. I can remember seeing your homework. Basically, you returned an array of promises, right?
Yes.
You returned an array of promises, and then that well, we can actually perhaps I'll just open up a new window, and go to the homework. Was it class 44? Okay, where are we? This is the week 2. Can I actually? No, I'm going to open another one. Not this one, but this one. Okay, so week 1. Oh, that's funny. I'm missing something here. Okay, well, we can do it. So it's exercise 4, right?
Yes.
Okay, we can do it here. So basically, what we could return here is a promise. Well, we could return. So we have dices, and we can map them, right? And we can change. We can convert them to promises. I think that's what you all did. And if you didn't do that, you got an error message from the unit test.
Yes.
So we would have a dice, which I know it's a wrong spelling. It should be die. Okay, so for the next class I'm going to correct that. But because dice is actually plural, I didn't know that as a non-native English speaker. So we're going to create a from the roll dice. So roll dice returns a promise. Someone, yeah, shoot. Whichever wants to join. So we now we return a promise, right? This returns a promise. So
yes.
This dices array is mapped to an array of promises. Yeah. So you could here for roll the dices, you could say, okay, it returns an array of promises. So this won't work, right? Because the result that I get is not a single result from a promise. It is actually an array of promises.
Yes.
Yeah.
I put this function inside promise all.
Yeah, that works. That works. Yeah, so that works because now
yes.
This returns an array of promises, and this waits for that promises to be resolved and then prints the results. That works. But
in this case, it works, but one of the test cases fails.
Yeah, because the test case does not want this code, which did not have a to-do inside, to be changed. Yeah. So basically your code works, but you make more modifications than is necessary. Yeah, because if you return the promise here, you wouldn't have to change this code and see that the to-do is in here.
Yes.
Now, you could say, okay, the other solution works as well. But basically, and this comes back to a question that what is her name?
Actually, I think it's my question. It's like I have the similar situation with Chalar,
okay.
And then I was questioning why do I have one error message, and it says I can't pass this test, and it's actually the exactly same situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the roll. Let's see, what does the roll dice say? Refactor the roll dice is to throw the 5 dice in a row by using map. It says for use. It doesn't say use, right? So it is a bit unclear where this promise.all should go. But if you strictly look at this exercise, it says here is the stuff that you need to do. It doesn't say here also change this. Now this comes back to a question that Christina asked, and I'll just get rid of this. Here, she said it's not for the same exercise, but basically she changed some code that was not strictly necessary to change. Yeah, and then she ran into the problem. And basically, what I want you guys to pay attention to is this remark that I'm making here, or this comment, and I'll read it out loud. So, when making changes through a pull request to a repo that is not your own, yeah, like the homework repo, you are well advised to restrict yourself to just the required functional modifications. Don't make changes to code that does not need changes simply because you perhaps don't like the style or something like that. You may break things and provoke, I'll read it out loud, what the fuck comments from the code owner or reviewer who may reject your PR for that reason. So only make the necessary changes. Don't go changing other code which is unrelated or which does not need change. And this is especially important when you work in a team, because, well, other people will complain, why did you make the change to my code, which didn't need a change? Now, again, in this exercise 4, it was not really clear that you were not supposed to make the change. And although your code works, if you run it, the unit test fails because it specifically checks to see whether the promise that you return from the function is indeed a single promise, or a promise that, or is a promise, but you returned an array of promises. So you returned an array instead of a promise. Okay. So again, it's not wrong, but it's not the minimal change that was required. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's clear for me now.
Okay, good. So, okay, let's go back then. Any other things about the homework week 1? I think what I've seen, most of you've done quite okay. Okay, so
I have a question.
Sorry?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thanks. My monitor reviewed my homework, and he told me at one of my homework that if you added the type of number, I don't know why I want to write it.
Okay, I think, yeah, this was in is it a double-digit number? I think that exercise, right?
I think so, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So
I know that the type of number is number, not string, so I don't know why I have to use it or write it.
Okay. Let's take it exercise and look at the code. So that was, I think, a check for double-digit numbers, right? So basically, what could happen is that some user of this function calls this function with, let's say, a string, and then your function will fail. Yeah, it will fail with a runtime error because, well, not with a runtime error. It actually will fail. I'm not sure why I don't see my solutions here, because I should have them. So if so let's say this is a number, right? This is a number. So your parameter could be called number, could be named number. And then you say you need to return a promise. Oops. So tell me, what do I actually need to type here? You've done the exercise, so just tell me what I need to type.
Here we want to return result. Yes, and catch the reject error. So let me remember again the question. The function called.
So you could probably, I guess you could look at your own homework, right? Because you've already done this.
Okay, yeah, because it's before 10 days. So. Number 2.
Or if you have difficulties, can ask somebody else, perhaps?
Yeah, number 2. Okay, so we will make if statements.
If statement, yeah.
Yes. For the numbers between 10 and 99.
Yeah. So how do we do that?
If number is bigger than or equal 10.
Yeah.
And just to
okay.
Yes, number less than or equal 99. 99.
Okay.
Okay. And we will resolve the string message above.
Okay, I can copy just this message, right? That's the one we need to resolve, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And else we will reject another string message.
And then what did we say? Expected this, but got that.
But it will be a new. Yeah.
But yeah. So
we will leave yes, and its number will put $sign.
And we need to modify this a bit, right, to make it a string template, and then this should be something like this, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now this works correctly when number is actually a number.
Yes.
Yeah. But what if it's a string like ABC? So what I think Yash, if it was Yash, I don't know, your reviewer gave the comment, he said, I think, or he would expect something like this. If the type of the parameter that was passed, we called it number here, is not a number, because I could pass a string which contains no number. Yeah, so this is how you test for whether the type of the parameter in this case is a number. Then you could say, okay, hey, there, you could reject it, right? Because you were expecting a number, but it is not a number. So you could reject, hey, this is not a number, or this is or expected a number. Yeah, and you don't want to continue the code then. If this is really not a number, you want to return the function, and you don't want to do this comparison that we do later in the if statement. So that's an extra check to see whether the parameter that was given to this function is actually a number.
So how it can be not a number and we have statements between numbers?
So what happens if I do this?
Yeah, this is string, right?
So I'm comparing this string to 10 and 99, but whatever the result is, it's
not true.
It's not a number. Yeah. So it will probably say it will probably reject it with this message. Yeah, but this is just an extra check to type whether the type of parameter was a number, was what you expected.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an extra safeguard, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was the comment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, let's close this again. Okay, if there are no other questions about the homework, then let's continue with the other topics here. So I want to review, to revisit some of the promises concepts with you. And I've prepared some files which I use. They're called Python or Jupyter notebooks, but they're just a way of showing pieces of code and the results of that code. So first we'll go through the promises one, which I have here. So you can see here, this file consists of some text and some pieces of code. So, and the first example here is the callback example. So my question is, what do you think will be printed when I run this piece of code? Who wants to give a jab? Oh, let me just get this out of the way. So here's a callback, which I'm supplying here. See, this is the callback.
It will write 1 and 2.
It will be 1 and 2.
1, 2. Everyone in agreement?
Thank you for your explanation.
Yeah. Okay, so let's run it. 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we have a promise here. See, I need to add some code to create a promise. And then I'm going to resolve with 1, and then I'm going to resolve with 2. What will be printed? And then, of course, we have here the function that we call, and then we use the then, and then again we have the value, so the resolved value, and we console log it. What will be printed?
1 and 2 again.
Who else?
Can we use resolve twice like this?
What will be printed?
I think it will take the second resolve, maybe 2.
Maybe first one.
I think only one.
Yes.
Only one for me.
Yeah, maybe 1 and 1.
Okay.
I think only one, yeah.
And why do you think that?
Because one promise resolved only once.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, never mind this message, because that's basically the return of foo. It's basically this answer that I'm looking at. Oh, oops. Yeah. So it prints only 1, right? So what can we conclude from this?
The promise gives only 1 resolve.
So the way I usually phrase it is, once a promise is settled, which means it's either resolved or rejected.
Yeah.
Its outcome is fixed and can no longer be changed. E.g. by calling resolve or reject again. Yeah?
Okay, sorry to interrupt, but now I seem to realize one of the mistakes that I've made in the previous week exercise about rolling the dice. Is that I try to put 2 resolves. The first resolve I want to put is, let me see where it is. I'm so sorry. Just give me 1 second. Because actually there is, if it's resolved, we're gonna +1, and then we're gonna do a set interval 500, right? These are 2 like results of resolved. But then let me just find the code for real quick. Oh yeah. So the task is to rewrite the refactor the function into the promises. So basically, one of the is if row is oh yeah, so it's here. So if the row equals to random rows to do, then resolve the value. And if the row is minus that random rows to do, then we set timeout and we roll another one. So basically what I did is I put them all into resolve and resolve. And that's the reason why it doesn't seem to work below, because I think they only resolve one promises instead of two. Sorry, if you know what I'm talking about.
Sort of. I would have to look at your code, but I think if you understand now that the promise, once it's settled, it can't be changed, then it will probably explain the issues that you're having. So this is basically by design.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this is by design, so that you know.
Sorry for everything.
Once you have a result, you know you can rely upon it that it will never change. Yeah, so that's a good thing. It's by design. So you can depend on this. Okay. Any questions about this? Is this clear? And
Yeah, it's clear.
Yeah. So the same thing here, right? If I call reject here, it will still resolve to 1. So again, I can't change the outcome, which I've already resolved, by calling reject. This reject call is just ignored because its outcome is already established. It's already fixed. And same here. If I change this to reject, and oops, and this to resolve, then okay, so it says an unhandled promise because I'm not catching anything here. But the fact that I'm calling resolve after reject doesn't make the promise now resolved. It's already rejected, so that's the way it is. That's the way it stays.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So if we use here promise.all, I think we will see 1 and 2, right? And
sorry.
the console log will be .gen
Yeah.
Value or .gen reject. So I think we will catch or resolve or reject all the data inside the function. Promise.all.
Where should I use promise.all?
.gen.
Yeah.
After the console log.
I think still there is only one promise here.
There's only one promise
Where
here, right?
is the array of promises?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is not an array of promises. It's just one. This is one promise.
Yeah,
this is one promise.
If we will convert it to promise.all.
Still, it won't work because there's a single promise again.
Yeah. So this is the way you create a promise. Promise.all does not create a promise. Promise.all is a way to, when you have already an array of promises, to wait for them all to resolve or for one of them to reject. Yeah? So this is the way you create a new promise, but promise.all is not a promise creating function.
Okay. I got it. Okay.
Yeah, okay, good. Any other questions about this? Is that clear now? Okay. There was bullet, I think, bullet. So this is the example that I used last week. I've modified it a bit. So here we have the idea I'm going to fire a bullet and it will travel and increment the distance by 1 here using a for loop. You see, so I'm creating this promise, and inside that promise I have a for loop where I increment the distance value from 0 to 10, or actually from 0 to 9, I think. And I'm going for each iteration of the for loop, I'm going to increment the distance by 1. Then I'm going to console log the distance, and if the distance is 5, I'm going to print a console, well, this console log, yeah, and resolve, yeah, and I'm going to resolve the promise. If the distance is 5, if the distance is 7, I'm going to reject the promise, yeah. So and then over here I'm going to use the then and the catch to see what the result of the promise is.
So this is one single promise, right?
This is one single promise. I'm going to resolve it at 5 and reject it at 7. Yeah, so here's again, you see this, the same thing. Because I'm calling here reject after resolve. Yeah, so I would expect, and I hope by now you also expect, for this resolve to determine the result of the promise, because this one comes later. Yeah. So let's open this one up in the terminal. Yeah, and I'll increment this size a bit. This is called bullet. Okay, so let's go for node bullet. Like this, and perhaps I can do it differently. And if I do this, and then I can do something like this, move the panel to the right, and I can see both the output and our I can perhaps do it again to see all the output and look at the code. So as we can see here, here I'm calling resolve at distance 5. Yeah, but the code continues and it calls reject at distance 7. Yeah, and here I still see the message resolved. This message resolved. So that's what we expected from the previous example. This is what we expected, because I've called resolve, and then sometime later I call it reject, and I still see that the promise is resolved. But we also see that calling resolve does not stop the code from running. It continues. Yeah, and the same would be over here. If I say here, if I change this, let's say this to 7 and this to 5. Yeah, and run the code again. Let me clear the screen first. Now we see I'm calling reject at distance 5 and resolve at distance 7, and now it's rejected. So also when I reject, that doesn't basically stop the code. It doesn't say, hey, we've rejected and now I can stop. So if you wanted to stop at this point, you need to add a return. Yeah. Now in the exercise, it was, I think, exercise 3. For some of you put the return after reject, and in the comments I said, well, normally you do that, but in this case I don't want you to do that, because I want you to understand what's happening here. So even if you don't do this return, because I said, hey, the dice needs to keep on rolling even if it rolls off the table, yeah, because that's the way the physics work. A dice doesn't stop, it continues rolling. Yeah. So basically a promise is like a probe that you put into code to monitor what's going on. It doesn't affect what's happening. The promise by itself doesn't affect what's happening. It's only when you make provisions in the code itself to stop it from continuing. And that's what I'm doing here by adding a return statement. Does that make sense? So let me see.
So why does adding a return statement just would stop the code?
Because I'm returning here from this function. You see, this is a function, this function, and I'm returning from it. So this code, after this code will not complete this loop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it will just return from this function and therefore return the promise or settle the promise. So
okay.
Yeah. So if I run the code again, it will now see it will stop when it hits this return statement. It will not try and resolve it at distance 7. I'm just returning from the function. this function.
Okay.
Yeah, this function here. This arrow function.
Oh, yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Any questions about this? Okay.
No, thank you.
I'll move this to the bottom again. Get rid of it. Okay, fine. So this is just a revisit of the promises thing and the difficult bit on what happens once the promise is resolved. Okay, back to you guys. What did you? What are the new topics that you learned this week?
Fetch, async, await.
Await?
Yeah.
So async await, right?
Yeah. And then fetch API, I guess.
Fetch API.
Json.
Well, yeah, probably I already have it here, I guess.
XML HTTP request.
Excuse me, sorry, I didn't get that one.
XML HTTP request.
HTTP requests?
XML.
Okay. So was that somewhere in the reading material? Because
yeah.
Okay. I didn't realize that. That's good.
And get and post requests.
So that would be get and post. They are called methods, right?
Yeah.
Methods. Now, around a bit more, but we're using in the homework. We're only using get. So what does get do? Well, why do we use get?
To just bring information or data, bringing the API to and use it.
Okay, so get is to get information, right, from an API.
Yeah.
And why would we use post?
To send something to the backend.
To send
we send something and get again a result.
To send it or to use it at for a browser or something.
All right, that sounds reasonable.
And also try catch.
Try catch, that's a good one.
Yes.
So that would be probably in combination most of the time with async and await, right?
Yes.
Okay, so fine. So let's then look at async and await in a bit more detail. Or other more learnings that you did. Did we miss out anything else? Or was this it?
I think that's it.
That's it. Okay, great. Async and await. Let's have a look at async and await. So again, I have this code here in a Jupyter notebook. So guys, the first one. This is a regular function, right? It's just the function food returns 42. So I'm saving the result of that function into variable result, and I'm console logging it. So this is of course a very simple question, but what will be the output?
42.
42.
So why did I choose actually the number 42? Do you guys know?
No.
In the return of the function, because we return 42 from the function foo, and we create a variable, we named it result, so we have the return in result. So we console.log the result, which is 42.
That's correct. But actually the number 42 comes from a science fiction novel called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's the answer to the question, what is the meaning of life? The answer
Yeah,
is
I
42.
remembered it now.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, now we have here a function that I've marked with the keyword async. And that's the only thing I changed, or I added. What will we see when I run this?
Undefined.
Undefined. Who else?
Promise.
I think it's still going to be 42, no?
As far as I know, async functions return promise. So
Oh, yeah.
It may say promise pending, or I don't know.
on the console, we will see again 42, but it will be a promise object.
Okay. Well, let's have a look. It's a promise. It's a promise, and it's already settled to the function to the value of 42. Yeah, because there's no timeout here, no async stuff. Well, it is async, but we got the it's resolved immediately. All right. I don't need this, I guess. Okay. Now we have the same async function, and now we are awaiting. So this was added. What will be printed?
42.
Only 42.
42.
Yeah, everyone in agreement?
Yeah.
42. So what await does is it awaits for the promise to be resolved. Yeah. So this foo returns a promise, and this keyword await allows us to await for that promise to resolve, and then continue the code. Because you saw previously, if I don't await it, I'll get a promise. So await waits for this function, for this promise that is returned by function foo to be resolved. Does that make sense? Clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I have a bit more code. Instead of having this code straight at the top, I have it inside a function. What will happen if I run this function? What output will we see?
I think it will be a kind of error because we cannot use await keywords inside a function. It should be async function.
Anyone
We
else?
can use
Yes,
await.
go ahead.
Sorry?
No, go ahead. I said go ahead if you have more to say.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, anyone else?
Yeah, I think the same. Async and await should be used on the same function. I guess if the function is async, then we can use await inside it.
Okay, let's give it a try. Let's scroll up a bit. So you guys are right. You can only use await if the function where you use it is itself async. Okay. So here we have, I've added now the async keyword. So what will be printed?
There is no promise to await for.
But we said that this returns a promise, right?
Yeah, it will be promise 42 again.
Yeah, but
I think 42 only.
But said this is not a promise, or it only works with a promise?
Because await inside another async promise, so it should await the bar. So I'm not sure if it's valid here.
So foo we saw here, foo I think, and we saw here, foo here. We saw that foo returns a promise. This function returns a promise. We saw that over here. Yeah. So over here we know that foo returns a promise that is resolved to the value of 42. Yeah. So
yeah, that await waits for foo function, but there is nothing for, like, we don't await this bar function. So this bar function itself returns a promise too.
It returns a promise. And what will be the value of the promise it returns?
It will be 42 because we await for foo and its result settled on 42. Then we, assign it to the result.
Okay, let's add some code in const result, or let's call it x as the unknown equals bar. Yeah, and then we can also console log x.
I think it will be undefined.
Okay, so now we have two console logs, one over here and one over here. And so x is actually the result of calling bar.
On the console, first we will see 42, after that undefined.
Undefined?
Yes.
Any more guesses?
I think the first is 42 and the second one is promise 42.
Promise 42? Shall I put you guys out of the misery? Okay, let's run this.
Yes, please.
Okay. So x, well, the first one, but you can see it's printed here later, is 42, and the first thing that we print is x. So x is a pending promise here. But actually, if I run it again, it's a pending promise. It's a promise. But foo, well, I guess this is clear by now, that if we await this promise, then because foo returns a promise that is resolved to the value of 42, result will be 42, and we will console log 42. But this one, of course, is funny. So every async function returns a promise. Yeah, and actually what we return from this bar function, well, we don't return anything, so by definition we return undefined. So what we see here is a promise that is pending, but it will ultimately be resolved to undefined. Because if I do this, console.log x value, and then I can say await x. X is a promise, right? So I can await it. Now let's run this. See, x value is undefined because I'm not returning here. If I return here 43, then it will be 43. Yeah, but because I don't return anything, it will just be undefined. Does it make sense?
Yes.
So if I do this bar, only bar, I'll get rid of this and get rid of these two lines. I get here 42, and this is from this line, which if I don't use anything, this Jupyter Notebook will print the return value of the last statement in the code section, and that's why you see this promise pending. So here I'm not actually awaiting this. I could await it, but I don't need to await it because I don't really care when this happens. Yeah, I'm not depending on the resolution of this promise. There's no other code here that depends on the result of bar, so I can just call it without await. I'll call it with await, and then we'll return 42. If we call it without await, it would just return the promise. Yeah, makes sense? Clear?
Yeah,
I see your mouth moving, Mohammed, but I didn't hear any sound from you.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
But is it a valid practice to
what?
To add await promise from another promise in promise that's have nothing?
Yeah, but sometimes you, as we saw in the, well, I'm not sure if we did see that, but sometimes you are there is no need for something, for a promise to resolve to a value. Sometimes you are only interested to know that the promise is resolved. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So just the fact that it has happened is sufficient information in some cases. That's also information. It happened.
Okay.
Yeah. Does it make sense? Okay, let's look at.
I need to see it in practical.
I think. Oh yeah, we see that later because we're going to revisit the catwalk, and then.
Okay.
Yeah. So error handling, and I need to watch the time. Error handling. So now in our function foo, we're not resolving the value. We're throwing something. Oops, something went wrong, and you haven't, I guess, seen, or perhaps you have, the throw keyword. Throw basically means creating an error that you can catch. Yeah, and it will result in the case of promises in a rejected promise. Yeah. So here in our function foo, which is an async function, so it returns a promise, but by throwing an error inside of it, we're not resolving the promise, we're rejecting this promise. And now in our function bar, we await the result value of the promise, and then we console log it, and here we call the function bar. So what will be printed here? What do you expect?
Error, because the rejection is not handled.
Yeah, everyone agrees, or do you think differently?
Bar still gets a promise that it's pending, and also as a console log, it will be an error.
Okay, let's have a look. So basically what you see promise pending is here, right? So bar, at the point where I call bar, I see a pending promise. But I also see an unhandled promise rejection. See, so this is the text that I'm rejecting with, and it's unhandled. So how? Because when we await, we can only await a resolved value. But this promise does not resolve to anything. It throws an error. So how do we deal with that? Well, we already know now about try and catch. So here, now we have our function foo, which throws the error. And here we have our function bar, where we have now used try and catch to
Rohan,
catch.
Should we prefer downloading CDN files or link to avoid slow connection problems?
Sorry, is this Who's asking the question? Who asked this question?
Charles?
Use link.
My friend is speaking. Sorry for that. It is at another session.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay.
So this is
It is
completely
conflict
unrelated
now.
to what we're doing
It is
here.
conflict now. Sorry for that.
Okay, no, okay, fine. I was a bit confused. Okay, so here we have this async function that throws an error. So this is the way you can catch, when you use async and await, you can catch the error and handle it. So what will be printed?
Yeah, promise pending and then the error.
Oops, something went wrong.
Yeah, right, that's right. So this comes from bar, yes, this is the output from promise pending, and then sometime later, because again these are as we explained last week, these are micro tasks, right? So the bar function runs before this code runs. Yeah, because this code runs as a separate micro task. A promise is a micro task. So that's why we see this order. We see first the promise and then the error. Okay, is this clear? Async and await?
Yeah.
Okay, now here we used this function, we used an async function which throws an error. If you use another way of creating a promise, is what we already learned this way, right? Return a new promise, we use resolve and reject. And now I'm not using any resolve or reject, I'm just throwing an error inside this promise body. And this is also a way that you can cause a promise to be rejected. Although I'm not calling reject, by throwing an error, I still reject the promise. So let's give it a try. See? Error, oops. So this code is executing because of I throwing this error inside the promise constructor. Yeah, clear? Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have 10 more minutes left before the break. Oh, okay. I think we're probably going to continue after the break with some examples because I only have 6 questions now to answer, so I can take a bit more time for the other stuff. So let's go to the catwalk then. So I've copied the catwalk with promises from last week inside my week 2 folder here, and it is over here. So the index file is the same. Yeah, so we have this cat image here, this the the walking cat, and we have our script here that we invoke over here. So this was from the last week. So we have this walk function which returns a promise and takes 3 parameters, the image itself and then the start position and stop position. We have the dance function which returns a promise and it only takes an image. So in the walk function we have this set interval and every time this code runs we increment the step size. We increment the position by the step size, and then if it hasn't reached the stop position yet, if it has reached the stop position, we clear the interval and we call resolve to resolve the promise. So this promise will resolve when we have reached the stop position. Yeah, and while we're in this interval loop, we are incrementing, we're letting the cat walk up to the stop position. So that is basically the same. It is completely the same as last week. And then dance, we use a timeout to let the cat dance for 5 seconds. So first we switch the image to the dancing cat. We save the image of the walking cat in a variable. Then we switch the URL to the dancing cat. And then after the timeout occurs, we restore the image of the walking cat and we call resolve. Yeah, and then in the catwalk function that we call here through the loaded event. We create some constants, so we get the image from the HTML. That's already in the HTML. We define the start position starting from, so the cat starts off screen from the left margin and walks into the screen. Then the dance position is somewhere in the center of the screen, where we take into account the width of the image. And the stop position is the right edge of the window. And here, this is what we came up with last week when using promises like this and then. So we have a function called loop, where we first let the cat walk from the start position to the dance position, then let the cat dance, then let the cat walk from the dance the dance position, which is the center of the screen. Maybe I should have called this center screen, center pos. Let's call it center pos. And that's probably better. Center pos. So from start pos to center pos, and then we walk from center pos to stop pos. And then when we have reached the right hand side of the screen, we call this recursively this loop function so that it will start over. So let's just make sure that it runs as it is. So I'm going to open up this in the live server. And okay, there we have it, center, sort of. It's still, I think, the center from my other screen. My other screen is not as wide as this screen. So probably if I reload this, it will walk up to the correct center. Okay. I'll move it. So, who wants to guide me on how to convert this to async and await?
Can I say something? Can we start with await after the break to be refreshed, because I want to understand every line. So can we do it after the break, please?
After the break, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. Maybe then we should break now, if you like, and come back at well, it's now 11. How long do you want to break?
10 minutes.
10 minutes?
Yeah, 10 is fine.
So okay, let's make it then on my clock 13 minutes, 25 past 1.
Yep.
Yeah?
Okay.
Okay, 25 past 1. See you then.
Okay, see you then.
Oh, mooi. Laat. Doe hem dan niet meer op het slot nu. Ja, mooi. Met jou staat het gelukt met jou? Oké.
So how can I take this code with the promise? Have you posted it or send it to someone?
Oh, you want? Okay, I'll just. What I can do is.
Yeah, I want to see the promise again, so before
Okay.
making it away.
I'll. So what I'll do here is I'll commit the changes we made. So. So this is usually how I commit stuff. I don't use all these command line things. I just use VS Code. So all these are my changes that I made so far. I'm going to commit it by pressing like this. Yeah, and then I'm going to sync the changes. So these are in the same URL that I sent last week. I don't know, but you can find them in Slack, I guess, or I can probably post it again. Let's see. That would be. I screwed up my own meeting, I think, but
Hey, Jimmy, muted.
Oh, thanks. I screwed up my own window with the meeting, but I hope it's still there. I'm still recording, I think. I hope.
Yeah.
So let's see. Or actually, I can probably use a chat in here. Let's see, I can post it in the chat. So in the chat, I'm using Git. I'm using SSH. Are you for GitHub? Do you guys also use SSH? Otherwise, you have to change that to HTTPS, I guess.
Yeah, we use SSH.
Okay, so that's where the latest changes to the repo that I'm using for demo purposes here now in the session, where you can find them. So I'll share my screen again. Okay. So we are going to convert this then chain into an async await chain. So who wants to guide me in how to change this? So we're talking about this, right? Talking about this. How we can change this into async and await.
First, make the function async by writing async in front of the arrow function on line 41.
Line 41, async. Okay.
Then we have to remove all thens, and let's do like this. Let's make a constant and give a name and make it equal to walk by awaiting it.
Let me first get rid of all the thens, right?
Yeah.
What you said. So thens, then, and then. Okay, and if I save this, it will be 4. Okay, I got rid of the thens. Now what was your next step?
We are gonna assign all these functions to a variable.
Yeah.
In order to use on the next function.
Okay, so let's just I'll call it A then, right?
Okay,
doesn't really
then
matter.
We should write await.
Await?
Yeah.
Okay.
Then instead of thens image, we are gonna write thens A.
Thens A.
I guess. Yeah.
Okay, thens A. Okay. And then?
Then we're gonna assign it to another variable and write await in front of it, and it goes like this. I guess, I'm not sure.
Wait. Ah, no. Wait. Thens A, and then?
You are muted, Saeed.
I think Saeed.
Okay, I was muted. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you were muted.
So we're gonna create another variable.
Yeah.
On line 44.
Yeah.
And make it equal to the walk function.
Yeah.
And write await in front of it. And instead of sending these parameters, we are going to send the result of the previous one, which is B.
B. Okay, and then what?
I think the other parameters has to go as well. I'm not sure.
But walk expects 3 parameters, right?
Okay. So what are we going to? What did we return in the thens function then?
If you can remember, and I have it still here. So this was from previous week. We didn't return anything, right? And then, see, empty parameters.
Oh, okay. So they are not connected to each other. They don't use each other's.
Well,
return.
this comes back to the question from Alex, right? Because you see, we don't return anything here.
Yeah.
So, but the only thing that we're interested in is that it has happened.
Okay, then we don't have to use that variables.
Yeah, let's go back then to where we were. So you say we don't need this variable.
Yes, we don't need them anymore.
Okay.
And we have to turn dance back.
Then-
What were the variables? I don't remember. It won't be a.
Okay, so I'll move this one from last week, which was this one. I'll move it to the side here, so we can compare.
Okay,
See?
yeah, better. So we are gonna do dance image.
Let me
not
get rid of
going
this.
to
So
assign
we're so here we have. So we
Okay,
start with this
that is
one.
correct.
Yeah.
And on line 42, we don't need B anymore. Variable B.
Yeah.
So we can delete that part.
So
And
we-
instead of taking parameter A, we send image again.
Image. Okay.
And on line 44, const C is going to go. Then instead of B, we are gonna do image one more time.
Image.
Then loop will start. We don't need to put await on in front of it, I guess.
Okay. Other
And
people.
wrap it up with try, and that's it.
We could wrap it up with try, and normally we should, but we're not calling reject anywhere.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So we know that, right? So we know it can't reject. So there's not much point in wrapping it up in a try and catch, which you would normally do with async and await. But here we can rely upon the fact that our code will never reject, unless there's some runtime error. But then we'll see it anyway, because we'll get a message about an unhandled promise rejection. Yeah. So is everyone on board with these changes? So let's give it a try. And let's see. I need to kill this one, and then I need to go back over here and then say we're in this. Yeah, so I can open the live server and move again the cat over here and refresh the screen to make sure that the dance is in the middle. And what I normally always do for browser-based applications, I open the developer console, because I always want to see, is there some error messages that I missed in the console. See, there are no error messages, but just to make sure, I always open the developer console. Okay, this seems to work fine with await, async await. So let's move this out of the way and go back to the code and get rid of this. I'll leave it here, actually. Now, is there a further improvement that we could make here? Anyone?
I couldn't catch it. Can you ask again?
Okay. Is there a further improvement that we could make here in this code?
Can we put try catch block inside async function for improvements?
Yes, you can, but as we discussed earlier, I'm not rejecting anything. There's no way that we can catch an error here, other than a runtime error, that I make a syntax error or something. So I could use a try and catch, but the catch handler is never going to be executed, because I'm not rejecting the promise anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was not the improvement I was looking for. Any other ideas?
Removing loop outside the catwalk.
Outside the catwalk.
And int modes.
Yeah, so where should it move? Is it somewhere in main or something, or what? That's not really...
No, just to separate it, just
okay. So where
before
should
it maybe.
Are you talking about this loop here?
Yeah.
Yeah, but this loop here requires start pos, which is defined here.
Okay, I'm just yeah. Okay.
So the beauty of using async and await is that your code looks like synchronous code. Yeah, because of the await keyword. So what we can actually do, which we could not do with then and catch, is we can actually say, hey, let's use a while loop here, and while true, so while forever, basically. Yeah, so this loop will run forever. While true, do these things, and I don't need to call this function anymore. But of course, because I now use await inside this function needs to be async.
Should be async.
Otherwise, I can't use await. See? Let's see what the cat does. Let's refresh. Okay, so it still works. So this is the, let's say, the final version of the code that I think is good. So it's almost like this is synchronous code because of the await keyword. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So how does this compare to what you can remember from week 1 browsers, the code that you produced?
A lot easier and
Yeah?
a lot easy to understand.
I thought so too. Okay.
And we can also, I think, simplify the whole code by removing the promise and using async instead for each function there.
Where do you think I can make a further improvement?
Here, like in function walk, to make it async, so we're not returning promise resolve.
Yeah, but the difficulty is I can't make this function async because I need to resolve it some point later.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's try this. Okay. What did I do? So I can't do this async and remove the promise like this. So now, when can I call? I can only return something here, right?
Yeah.
I can't say through this mechanism, at this point in time, you need to resolve the promise. This promise will be resolved immediately with some value. And I need to resolve it sometime in the future. And that's why we have this resolve function when you create a promise constructor. With async.
So even than the async await, it's the new evolve of promises, but it still has some limitation.
No, the difference is that you can't use or async and await is primarily because it always you use async and await with asynchronous code. It's primarily a way of consuming promises. Yeah, the consumption of promises. It's an alternative to then and catch.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but to create
Yeah.
a promise, you still need this promise constructor. Now, having said that, most of the modern functions like fetch, for instance, already returns a promise. You don't have to
Yeah.
create one yourself. Yeah, but in this case, we need to create the promise ourselves because that's the only way to work with this asynchronous code. This resolve is called sometime later when this function has already executed. Does that make sense? I mean,
Yeah.
Okay. Right, now we have to move on, I guess, unless there are more questions about what we did. So I think in the homework for week 2 there is a similar exercise, but then for the dices. Okay, let's go back to the README. So what did we do? We refactored the cat. Let's go to fetch. So we use fetch to get information from a web API. Or actually, you can use fetch also for posting information, but if you, in its simplest form, is just for getting information from a website. Now I was planning to do a live code of that in view of the time. Let's see, what else do we need to do? So we need to do fetch. We need to okay, I can probably do the live coding because I think doing this stuff up front before your questions already answers a lot of your questions, I think. Yeah. So let's go to let's try and live code anyway. So I have here, and I'll get rid of this, and I get rid of almost all the stuff. Close others. I have here an index.html file which just contains a static header, and then an empty div with an ID of root and a script tag for our index.js script. If we look in the script, oh wait a minute, this is already and I need to go here in here. If we look at the script, I have a URL, so I'm going to use the Pokemon API. It is also in the exercise, and I'm actually going to limit it to 5. I guess I don't need 151 Pokemons. Just 5 is fine for me. So I have two functions. I have a fetch data function, and I have a main function. And the main function we will call fetch data, and then from the data that is returned, we will either render the data or render an error. And then the main function is executed when the page has been completely loaded. So we're going to use the fetch API. So that would be fetch URL. Right, I'm going to pass the URL here in main. Over here. So let's call, so this is not the ready code, right? It's just a start. Fetch data URL. Now we know that fetch returns a promise. Yeah. So to use fetch data, this function needs to be async, right? Because we're going to use it as a, we're going to use, we need to use, well, we can do, let's use await, because you can also use then and catch, but let's use await. So I'm going to store the result of fetch into a variable that I'm going to call response. Okay. So let's then here, it's also an async function. Let's use fetch data. So let's say const, what do I call it? Data equals, so I'm going to await that stuff. And then I'm going to, for now, I'm going to console log the data. Okay, let's get rid of the comment here. Oh, of course, I need to return the response here. Otherwise, I'm returning undefined. So this code is not ready yet. you probably know that there will be issues when I run this code, or that it will not do what we expect it to do, but at least we have something to start with. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to kill this one and then run this one. I'll move it over here and I'll open the developer console to see what I'm console logging. Okay, and then, oh, sorry, I need to increase the, so let's reload, make it a bit bigger still. Oh, that's a bit too big, I guess. Gonna clear this. Can you read this? Okay. So what am I getting back here? A response. Type course URL. I can probably expand this. Oh, I can't expand this, but I can look at the. Okay. Oh, yeah. I need to click here. So I'm getting back here some object, which has a lot of stuff in here, but not really the stuff I'm interested in at the moment. I don't see any of the Pokemon actual data. Okay, this gives me a headache to look at this. It's not the stuff that I want. So we need to do something more. We need to, once we have this data, once we have this response here, we need to actually say, we need to convert whatever we get back into something that we can use in JavaScript. And therefore, you need to call on the response the JSON method. Because what you get back, the way data is transferred over HTTP is in the form of text. Yeah, either HTML text or whatever text, and we need to convert that text in something that we can use in our JavaScript application. So, for instance, what I could do is I could say const data equals response, or actually I need to use await because it returns a promise. Response dot. For now I'm going to use text. So now I'm going to say, hey, assume that what we get from this website is just plain text. Yeah. So if we now see what we get back, and I need to see where did it go. I think I can get rid of this one. This one. So what do we get back? We get back this information, which does not look really nice. So let's see, can I get it somewhere else? I guess I can go to the network tab and then look here. Oh yeah, it's all. My screen is too cramped to show it all. So I'm going to do something else. I'm going to go to my code.
Maybe if you make it horizontally.
Yeah, probably, but we can display it directly into our HTML page. Let's see, where am I? Which one? This one, I think. No. Yeah. So what I'm going to create a new function. I'm going to call that function render data. And here I'm going to render the data that we get back from the API. Okay. And I'm going to copy some code here in view of time from the the ready version I already have. So let's have a look what we have here. I called it actually JSON data, I think, JSON data in this version. So this function render data takes an argument, and then I'm going to get the root of the div that is already in my HTML. If you can remember, we had it over here. So this div with an ID of root, I'm going to get it here as the inside a reference to that div. I'm going to create an element, an HTML element called pre, which is pre-formatted text. Yeah, I don't know whether you have seen that one. You can use a P or whatever, but this is pre-formatted text. So that this will print the text as is, as you get it back. And then I'm going to not do this because I don't get JSON back yet. I'm just going to say JSON data. And then I'm going to append this element to the root. Yeah. So I can now call render data here. Yeah, so we get back data from the fetch data. We call it data, which is a terrible name, but okay. Or we could actually call it, I guess, Pokemons. Let's call it Pokemons. Okay, and it's underscored because my spelling checker doesn't know the word Pokemon, so don't mind the underline here. So we're getting this data here from fetch data. We tell JavaScript to consider this, what we get back, as just plain text. Yeah, and then we're going to call our function here. So this would be, I guess, a string. We pass that string to our render data function, and the render data function puts it into a text content of this pre element, and then we should just see it in the window. Let's see over here. Now you can see it here in the window. If I increase it, this is just a text. Well, it's actually a text string. This is just a text string. I could say to make this clear, I guess what I could do is sorry, this one I guess. No, sorry. I need this one. Yeah. So to make this clear, I could say here. Okay, so we now look at the wrong screen. Or not. For some reason, oh, I can scroll over here. Yeah. See, this is just text. So what we can do is, instead of using response.text,
we'll convert it to JSON.
We can say, hey, consider this text to be a JavaScript object notation. Yeah? So we're going to interpret the text that we get back as JavaScript object notation, as JSON. And now I can say here, now I know that Pokemon is not a string, but it's actually a JavaScript object, because this takes the text and converts it into a JavaScript object. So now what I can do here is I can I can convert this text that I get. Sorry, I now get an object. So maybe we can add that in the debugger. Let's I'll use JSON data. JSON data first. Okay, so let's have a look. What do we have in the browser? Well, we have this object. So what we get back here now from the response.json is a JavaScript object. Now that doesn't display very nicely. It says just object. So what we can do here is we can actually convert this object back again in a string, and we can use this function for that, Json Stringify. So I'm taking this JSON, which is now a JSON object, and I'm stringify it. I make a text again. Well, first let's not use this. Let's use it just like this, and now this JSON data is again converted to a string that I can display here over here. JSON string. Now you see the same stuff that we had previously. It looks like it looks like text, but it's actually string. Sorry, it looks like a string, but it's actually an object. But it's not displayed very nicely. And you can see here. Sorry, I think I probably did something. Yeah. So again, it's a string, but it's not very readable because it's all one line. So this stringify function also allows us to add extra parameters. Now I'm still always confused about the second parameter. It needs to be null. I don't. There's other options to use, but I've never used them. So second parameter is null, and here you can specify how many spaces you want the JSON text to be indented. So I'm using 2 spaces here. And if you now look, your data will look like this. Now this is readable. I can probably decrement the font size a bit. I asked for 5 Pokemon data, and here are the results. Yeah, plus some extra information about how to get. There are apparently 1,118 Pokemons at all in this API. If I want to get the next bunch, I can use this URL. Yeah, and there's no URL for the previous bunch because it's already the start of the list of Pokemons. And this is information about each of the 5 Pokemons that I've asked for. Yeah? Does it make sense? So let's go back to this one. Now I could perhaps create, let's say if there was an error here, I make a mistake in the URL here. It's not Pokemon, but Pokemon X. So that I would now expect the server to tell me, hey, this is an error. So let's have a look again in our console. Do I need to refresh? Okay, well, you can already see here, I don't get any text. I probably get something in the console, or at least I would hope I get something in the console. Let's see, what do we have? Console? Yeah, see? Uncalled improper syntax error. There's some error in the JSON or whatever, and expected JSON. So if we could see, look in the network response that we get back from the Pokemon API. Let's see, now I need to go to the network tab here. and we look at the response preview, it says not found here, not found. So basically what the Pokemon API is sending me back is not some JSON string, but the text not found. Yeah, and it also sends me back here a status code of 404, which means not found. So the problem is I'm not handling the error. I'm not handling the error. So what I could do here, well actually it's a bit different. This when you, well this actually throws an error here. But the way to normally check this, because here what you normally do, or what you should do, is to check to see whether the status code that you get back from the API is between 200 and 299. Yeah, that is the OK response. But there's a simpler way of doing that, is by checking the response OK property.
Okay.
Yeah, if response OK, then everything is fine. But what we can also say is, if response is not OK, then we can throw an error.
Throw error or throw new error?
You are completely correct. New error. So when we throw this error, we don't want to do anything else. We return from this function. We don't want to execute this code. Yeah. Oh no, sorry. Throwing an error, you don't need to return, because throwing an error will terminate the function. And you can already see that VS Code knew I was doing something silly, because it says here unreachable code. See? This code will never be executed, because after throw, everything stops. Now, of course, where do we handle this error? That was also a question I saw from one of the students, I think from another class, from the other group. I could handle the error over here, right? I could use a try and catch here. Sorry. Is this a good idea? Yeah?
Why don't we do it on the main function?
That's a good suggestion. Let's see what happens with this code. Okay, let's refresh to make sure. Let me get rid of the, no, I don't want to get rid of the error. So what do we have in the console? Can I actually make this a bit smaller, because I want to have a bit more space here. Let's see, what do we have in the console? So we do have in the console something went wrong, but I don't see anything here, right? I don't see any indication that there was an error. And if we go to the code here in the source, and we can look at the code here, if we place a breakpoint over here, what do we expect Pokemons to be? Well, let's give it a try. What is Pokemons? It's undefined, right? Because what we're doing here, ultimately this fetch data, after catching the error, it will just return it will return undefined. So basically, what we get from fetch data is just a promise that resolves to undefined, because we caught the error here. So it's best to catch the error where you can best handle it, or where you are in a position to best take care of the error situation. And ultimately, we want to tell the user that there was an error. Yeah. So it's by handling the error here, we are handling it too soon. You should give the code that calls your function the opportunity to act on the error. And we're not doing that here. We are preempting other code of handling the error. Yeah. So I think you, Said, suggested that we do it somewhere else.
Yes, on the main function.
On the main function. Okay. So what we can do here on the main function is we can use a try here and a catch. Okay, so now that we have this error, I want to do something with this error. I want to render it to the page. So let's create another function. Let's call it render error. And I'm going to pass the error that from the catch into this function render error. Now in view of time, I'm going to just copy that render error function from ready code I already have. So here's your render error function. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to again get the root div from here, from the HTML. I'm going to create an h1 element. I'm going to set the text content to the error message, and then I'm going to append that h1 to the root. Yes. So what do we have now? Let's see over here. So I'm going to remove this breakpoint and refresh the page. Something went wrong. Yeah, so in our main function, we either render the data or we catch the error and render an error. Over here. So let's see if I just make it a bit smaller. And it's probably too small for you, but then at least we can see the complete code. I could probably increment that. Yeah, it's so. So now we have the complete code on the screen. Yeah. So here we just, so the purpose of fetch data is just to fetch the data, nothing else. It just does one simple thing: fetch the data, throw an error if something is wrong. And let's correct this again so that we now do not throw the error. And also, because we are now not throwing an error here and this just returns a promise, we can simplify this function and just return this directly. So we're returning the promise from response.json. Does that make sense? I don't need to await it because there's no sense in awaiting it because I'm already doing that awaiting somewhere else. I'm doing the awaiting over here. So this is the simplest code for fetch data. I'm checking if it's not okay, I'm going to throw an error, and otherwise I'm just going to return the promise from response.json as the result of this function. Then over here, I'm awaiting that response. If there is an error, I'll catch it over here. If not, I get the data back from the API and I'm going to render the data. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, I am more clear now.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. So we did the fetch. Now something that you may run across when you do the project next week and also later for your own personal projects, you may run into some APIs that use course. And course, I think if you let me just Google for course. So what I normally do is when I Google for something like that, I prefixed with MDN, So for Mozilla Developer Network, and then type whatever I want to find out about JavaScript or the web. Oh, not course preflight, just course. And then here you can see, and I'll increment the font size. So by MDN, I get the first result from Google search will be for Microsoft Developer Network. And here you can read all about course, cross-origin resource sharing. I can never remember what the course acronym stands for, but here you have it, cross-origin resource sharing. And this basically means that if the web page that is making the fetch request is not the same as the domain of the API, then if course is there's the protection against course, you will not get that result. You will get a course error. And for that, for your own application, if you find an API that gives you this problem, you can better look for another API, because you can't use that then inside your function, your application. So I have an example of that. I have here I have a small server here at home. It's called I'm using a small device called the Raspberry Pi. Maybe you've heard of it. It's a small computer, and that you can buy for, I don't know, 25 euros or something. A small box, and you can run, for instance, Ubuntu Linux in it. So I have it over here, and here I'm running that server. It's running on my local area network, so it has an address like this. And here you can see here, this is the URL. I can access this little server using this API. And if I click on this URL, and you can see here this little API works with this JSON file. And if I, for instance, ask for modules, and then with the ID of or /1, it will give me this result back. So I have this code, the client over here. Let's see, I have it over here. So here is the index.html. It just has my script tag in here, and this is what the index.js looks like. It's similar, or actually identical, to what we already did with the live coding. So I have a fetch data function, I have a JSON data function, a render data function, render error, a main function, etc. And here I'm using this base URL from my own little server, and I padding to it module/4. So I want to get the result back from this API, and I'm going to display it in the page. So let's have a look. I probably kill this one, and now open this one over here in the live server. Yeah, and you can see I get the result back for using APIs. And you can look at the network tab. Over here. Refresh the page. So, yeah, refresh the page, and you can see here, this is the request I make. You can see here the header. I'm making this request to this URL with module/4, and I'm getting back this JSON object with an ID and a title. Now I'm going to restart my little server, and I'm going to enable course on that server, or actually I'm going to say you can't reach me unless you're on the same domain. Okay, so I'm going to stop this one, and I'm going to say, I can move this out of the way, npm run no course, no cross-origin sharing. Okay, so if I now refresh my page, which is still trying to make the same request, here if I refresh it, oh, did I do it correctly? I probably need to empty the cache in my browser. Yeah, failed to fetch. Because here you can see there is a course. Right. Now that you found headers response or headers. Yeah, I'm looking. I think you get a message in the console actually. Console. Failed to fetch. Has been blocked because of course policy. Yeah. Now the funny thing is, if you go directly in your browser to this URL, you still get it. But you don't get it when you use fetch in JavaScript. You get it, see, if I use the URL directly here in the address bar, but not via fetch. So not via JavaScript. So this is basically, this course policy is a way of protecting your API against unauthorized use, I guess. So if the web page is not coming from the same domain, then you can use course to protect against that. So if you run into this issue for now in your project, then there's no way to, or perhaps use what I think Christina did, use some proxy or so, probably tricks to circumvent this, but best advised for your own project not to use an API that uses course. Okay. Any questions on this? No, fine. Okay, good. Then we need to move on, I guess, because we're slowly running out of time. I still need to address your questions that you posted. So what did we do? Course. Oh, let's just do a quick one on JSON. We already looked at that, but JSON. So here I have, see, this is just a string here. It's a string using a string template. So here, if I say what is the type of that string and what is the content of that string, well, we can already know that the type is just a string. Yeah, the type is string, and when we console log it, we get this. Yeah. So how can we convert text, which this is text, a string, how can we convert that into an object? We can use the function JSON parse for that. So it takes a string, yeah, and then you will see here that we get an object back, and this is the content of that object. Now let's oh, it's probably over here. Yeah. So white space here, like we have over here, is something for us humans to grab or to understand the context of the data. A computer doesn't care about white text. Yeah. So I could also encode this JSON string like this without any white space. You can see it already becomes a bit more complicated. Now this is a very small string, but if you would have a large string, then it would be just one large line without white space. So, but the computer doesn't really mind. The computer can still produce from this piece of text a JSON object. Now what happens when there is when we violate the syntax of a JSON string? I've taken out one quote. Yeah, what do you think happens when I try to parse it?
Syntax error, or will just try to fix it himself?
Well, that would be very clever. That would be very clever if it could fix it itself. And usually you don't want code to fix some issue. You want to be aware of an issue. So code that fixes an issue for you is probably not very good. Because you want to know about the issues and fix them yourself. You want to understand what's happening and not some code that tries to be clever.
Yeah.
So it throws an error. Okay, and we already covered JSON Stringify. So I have this is a real JavaScript object. It's not JSON. It's not a string. So if we look at this, so I'm going console logging the data. This data is an object. I would expect this to be an object. I would expect this to be a string. And but it is a string. You see, it's all one line. And we already saw that we can add parameters to this to make it human readable. And now it becomes human readable because it has white space, it has indentation, things like that. Okay, so this was just a quick one on converting from JSON, which is just a text format, to a JavaScript object. And the other way around. If we have a JavaScript object, how to convert it back to text. Because if you want to send it to the over the internet, you need to send text, because the internet doesn't understand JavaScript objects. It only understands text. Is this clear? Questions? Yeah? All nodding? I think that covers all the stuff that I wanted to do before the break. Now let's get to the questions and then your questions. So I've marked the questions that Jas is going to answer in this group. So let's skip to our questions. Site. So in the example code piece, we have catch for errors. Why is error thrown? Let's see.
Actually, I kind of understand it now, because throwing new error is kind of rejecting in
Exactly.
promise, right?
So
but
we
if
would
we don't write it, we still get some error. And
yeah. So like this, we wouldn't throw the error. We would check, is there an error, or is there a reason why we want to throw an error? And that reason could be, in our case, if the response that we get back from, well, actually this is fetch data, right? So this is our function. You would throw the error probably in fetch data when you check the response. If the response is not okay, then you throw the error. Yeah?
Okay. But if we don't throw an error, for example, for the previous example, I can still see some error on the console log if I want to write it. But if we clear, like if we erase line 96, we still get some error, right?
So if fetch data throws an error, fails, then you will catch it over here.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what actually, as far as I understand, by writing line 96 throwing new error is kind of up to us. Like we define what the error is.
Yeah, but in your case, you're throwing the error even if you get valid data back, because you're awaiting the data, you're console logging the data, and then you're throwing an error. There is no reason to throw an error here, because everything is fine.
Okay.
I think you mean
I wrote it wrong then. Yeah, I mean something different.
Well, we should make if statements if we get the data. Then
that's correct.
Yeah.
That two line you highlighted should be wrapped in if response dot okay. Actually, not that two line.
Yeah. So you could say if data is undefined or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
If data is undefined,
then we can throw that error.
So if data, you could say if data, if you expect a property, let's say data dot Pokemon. If it doesn't contain that property, you could throw an error.
Yes.
Yeah. That would be, so you're going to validate the data that you get back. You know that you get data back, but you want to do some extra check on the data.
Okay.
Yeah. So you could say throw new error, missing Pokemon property or something.
I see.
Yeah?
Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Got the idea. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Okay. So Ahmed, after listening async await, should we ignore or forget using promises and just use async and await, or are there any cases? Are there any cases we should use them? So async and await is a way to consume promises. So it's an alternative to then and catch. Yeah. You still, if you want to create a promise, you still need to use new promise and then resolve reject. So async and await again is, you can't forget promises because async and await works with promises. It consumes promises. Does that answer your question? Is that clear or?
Yeah, it's clear now.
Okay, good. Mohammed. Hi, hello everyone. I want to know when shall I pass from JSON to JavaScript? However, JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. Well, actually, yeah. So it stands for notation, but it's a JSON object or a JSON. It's actually string. It's a string of text, a piece of text. So if you want to convert it to a JavaScript object, you need to use JSON.parse. Now in this code over here, we use this response JSON. I'll increase the font size again. This does it for us. So under the hood, this method uses JSON.parse to convert the text that we get back from the API back to a JavaScript object. So we don't have to do it ourselves. What we could do is we could also say this. We could say, but it's more work for us. But we could say const text equals text return JSON.parse text. We could, not text. We could do that, but that's more work for us. So let's, we have a ready-made function, JSON. So let's use that rather than to do it ourselves. But under the hood, this function, this method, uses JSON.parse.
I understand that, but what confused me is JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation.
Yeah.
So I thought that it's related to JavaScript. I don't have to parse it or something like that. That's what was confusing me.
So across the internet using HTTP, you work with text. Text is the vehicle for transferring information from one site to a browser or the other way around.
Yeah.
It can only work with text. So a JavaScript object notation is text that conforms to the JSON specification. Yeah, so it needs to have a certain syntax. If you look at this JavaScript file here, it's also text, but it conforms to the JavaScript language specification. But this is just text. Yeah, and the same thing with JSON. JSON is just text that conforms to the way it's built up, that text with quotes and colons or whatever, that conforms to the JSON specification.
No, I understand. I understand the difference between them.
Okay.
It has its own syntax, so I have to parse to make it reusable in JavaScript.
Yeah. So yeah, you need to convert the text which conforms to the JSON specification to an actual JavaScript object, which is not text. Yeah, a JavaScript object is not text. It's a what is it called? Binary or whatever.
Can I ask something related?
Yes, please do.
Is the method .text is the same as render row response?
Let's go back to the example. Okay. So this, what's your question?
Is it the same like render row response?
Render row response
function? Yeah. Oh, okay. I think this one it was in the Code Academy, but I think they make it.
Yeah, I didn't look at that myself.
Okay, I think Code Academy that made that function. It's not natively in JavaScript. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay, let's see, where were we? Daniel. Chala. Inside the code below. Although there's a catch block, why do we throw a new error inside the try block?
I think it is the same question with Said.
Yeah, so I think we already covered this, right?
Yes,
Because
yes, I think so.
Yeah. So no, well actually, yeah, we covered it sort of. So if you throw an error here, it will be caught here. Yeah.
Yes, I see now.
So if the response is okay, we do this. We return the normal data. But if not, we throw an error. And we happen to catch the error over here. We could also catch it perhaps in main or whatever. But in this code, we're catching it here. Now, if you catch it here, it's going to be logged to the console, right? And the end user doesn't have the console open to look for errors. So this is not a good place to handle your errors. But you could say, hey, I want to see in the console as a developer, if I open the developer console, I want to see the nature of the error. But I still also want to handle it somewhere else. What you could do is what we call rethrowing the error. So in your catch handler, you could say throw error. So now the error will be thrown, the error will be logged to your console, but you throw it again. And now a higher level function, which calls getData, also gets to see the error.
Okay.
And can catch it and act on it. Yeah. But normally you wouldn't do this in your function that uses fetch. You would do it in your main function or in a higher level function that calls this function, where you are in a better position to do something useful with the error, like informing the end user.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I think all the other questions are for Yash, or not? Yeah. Oh no, we have Daniel here, of course, and we have Alex, not to forget.
I kind of understand my question right now, but yeah.
Okay, let's go through it anyway. In the online class, we learn about fetch from API, and we need step 1, response JSON, then get the data, so that would be in our function main, I guess, and then catch the error. I know what I need to do, but can you tell me what response JSON is? Okay, I think we covered that, right? It converts the text that we get back from the API into something that we can use in JavaScript, the JavaScript object.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Then Alex, I know it won't count as a valid question, well, I don't know, but what is actually the headings in post request? And I think there was a question from someone else who also had a similar, not in our group, about post. Let me just quickly look for the word post. So we have 4 places. Here. Oh, it is from you, Charlie. I did not get this question. Oh, yeah. Oh, you used post. Yeah. And there was also another one. Here, this one. So this sets a request header. Set the request header. Oh, wait a minute, sorry. Yeah. So when we send something using post to an API, you need to tell, hey, I'm sending this text here, but you need to tell the receiving end how it should interpret that text. Is it JSON? Is it HTML? What is it? Because it's only text, right? So you need to tell it, hey, this is JSON. The content type I'm sending, although it's text, you need to interpret that text as JSON. Yeah, and by the way, I'm a valid user of your API because I have an API key. So you tell it in the header. If you don't supply this API key, which is like a password, the API will reject your request because it's not coming from an authorized registered user. So you can communicate that stuff through the request header. Now this, you rightly said, well, I don't know whether this is a valid question, because you'll learn about this in the node module more. It's not, we don't cover it over here. We only cover getting information. But
yeah, but it was already in the Code Academy
okay, yeah,
was practicing, so
so you need to tell the API, I'm sending you this text, but please consider this to be JSON. It's not HTML that I'm sending. It's not something else I'm sending. I'm not sending XML. I'm sending JSON text. Please interpret the text that I'm sending as JSON. Now, if we go back quickly to, let's say, to our fetch example. Let's see, let's stop this and let's go back here. Open it in the live server. Okay, so here we have this Pokemon data. Now let's look here at the network tab. Okay, and let's examine this. So I've done, let's get rid of the breakpoint. And let's look at the network tab. So here I'm going to close this one and perhaps, so this is our request that we make. And now we can look at the headers. See, I've made this request here to this URL. I've used the get method. Yeah. The status code that I got back is 200, which means okay. This is the remote address that that it was sent to, and this is the IP address of the Pokemon API. And then you can see here in the response. Now we get a response back from the API. You can see here that the content type is JSON. So the API is telling us, I'm sending you back this text. Please consider this text to be has the JSON format, so that the receiving side knows it can use JSON.parse on it. It could also be, for instance, if we refresh this, let's see. For instance, this index.html file, which comes from us, is let's see, where is it? Is it over here? I think the default is probably, oh wait a minute, respect header. Okay, I was expecting to see here content type HTML, but I don't see it actually. Oh wait a minute, here. I need to go for this one. I had the wrong one. This one. Preview. No, it's not preview, header. Response, where are you? I don't see it. Okay, but the request says, hey, I will accept as formats for the text. I will accept HTML. I will accept this format. I will also accept, I think, application JSON. Oh, actually, here. Oh, here are all the formats that my application accepts. HTML plus XML, it accepts all kinds of things. So this header information gives tells the receiving side or how the text that is sent should be interpreted as JSON or something else. And also, when you send text, you need to tell the receiving side on the other side, hey, I'm sending you text, but please interpret that text as JSON. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So it's kind of guiding information for the data that I am sending.
Yeah. So you could also to take an analogy, you could say, hey, please interpret this text as French, or Dutch, or English, because it's just text, right? And if I don't understand the language, then at least I can tell you, hey, this is not Spanish, this is Italian. Because ultimately, I'm just sending text.
Okay, that's clear.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Clear? So that was Daniel, and that was Alexandra, and then we're finished. So are there any other questions or things that you would like me to cover? Because we still have, I guess we could make it up until 3. So we still have some time. Anything you want to discuss?
Not from me.
No, for me also. No question.
No questions?
Yeah, I'm good.
I didn't
Yeah.
went through all the other questions, but
Oh, okay.
do you find any interesting questions?
Well, we can go quickly through them and see. So I already covered the first question from Christina. She had another question. When we need to have chained asynchronous functions, which method is better to use? Async, await, or wait before calling the, or then or await? Well, that's a matter of taste, I guess. Now, previously, a couple of years ago, we didn't have await. So we only had then and catch. And then in 2017, I think async and await was introduced. And I personally prefer to use async and await for consuming promises. But if you work, let's say, in a company and you have some existing code base that uses then and catch, then you may need to adapt to working that way. Yeah, but if you have if you're going to design a new application, and the choice is up to you, then you can choose whatever you like. And I personally prefer to use async and await. But you may differ. I don't know. Okay. Yeah. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. About the link that you have sent, it's not work. I tried to clone it and it's not work. So I don't know.
Okay, that's probably because you may use HTTPS.
No, I use
SSH?
Yes.
Yeah, but I think
I don't know what's up.
I am just sending the link for the repository itself. So.
Oh, did I set the wrong? Oh, but you're using HTTPS. That works. That works fine. That should work.
Yeah, now it's okay.
Okay. So because I'm using what's it called, SSH for GitHub, but yeah, okay. Okay, yeah. So that was okay. Then from Daniel, at which point should we check catch and errors? So we covered, I think this was about where do you catch the error? Do you catch it directly in the fetch data, like over here, or do you catch it somewhere else? And I think we covered that. You should catch it where you are in the best position to handle it, and usually you want to tell the user that there is a problem, so you probably want to delegate this to a higher level function, like we did in our example. Yeah, so he's giving here, he's comparing two things, and here we're catching it in the main function, and then, well, he's only console logging it, but ultimately you want to tell the user because the user doesn't look in the console log. Okay, we covered Said, I think. Ahmed was covered. Lydia, is fetch only for API external? But what if we won't use API? We can use normal problems. Well, fetch is only for fetching data. If you don't want to fetch data, then you don't use fetch. It's the only purpose for using fetch. And she was still confused about debugging. Where do I put breakpoints? Okay, well, you put breakpoints where you want to look at what the state of the JavaScript engine is at the point where you place the breakpoint. Yeah, so it's like putting a probe somewhere. You're probing in your code. Hey, what's happening here? So you place a breakpoint there. The JavaScript engine freezes, and you can examine its contents. Yeah, and then that's where you place the breakpoint, at the points of interest. Okay, but she's not here, so I can't really ask her in detail if that answers her questions. So Mustafa, what's the difference between promise all and promise raise? Well, this is sort of question you can easily Google. Yeah, and if you don't understand it, you can specify what you don't understand. But basically,
Can I answer it?
Please do.
I can try. From the name, it's promise raise. It's gonna resolve or finish the first promise. That's he's fine. So that's from the name, from promise. Promise raise. Yeah.
Yeah. So all promises.
And all will resolve all promises, and at the end the result will be resolved if all the promises are resolved or one of them are rejected, so the result will be rejected from.
Yeah. So yeah. So they both functions, both methods takes an array of promises. Yeah. But promise all will give you an array of the result. If all promises are resolved, you will get back an array. Promise raise will always give you back one result, not an array. Either the first one that is resolved or rejected. Whatever comes first from the array. And is it recommended to load data from the desk? I think it probably means disk, because and this is basically a question that I would refer to the Node module, because we're not working with files yet. That is in the Node. And same goes for the next question about regex. Also, can we call an async method from a sync one? Well, you already know that you can't. Function that you call, let's put it that way, the function in which you use await needs to be an async function. So I'm not sure if that is actually the question that is asked here, but that's the answer I can think of. Moab, we covered one. Chala, yeah, we might have covered that one. Abdul Rahman, what's the difference between sequential and parallel request? Okay, we can do that a quick one, I guess. If we go to the Pokemon example that we have over here, let's kill it, and let's go to the live server, and I'll move it over here. So here we made a request, right? Now suppose we get back this data, and we can see here we get an array back with 5 results, and each object of each element of that array is an object which contains another URL, and this URL we can use to get detailed information about a Pokemon. I don't know what detailed information it is, but this is the URL that you can use. Now we could, after we have received this result back, we could create a new fetch request for each one of these URLs, and we could use promise.all on them because they are not interdependent, right? We could just ask for, hey, give me. We could issue 5 fetch requests, put them in an array, a promise array, and await them. Well, perhaps you can do it quickly. So we know. Oh, wait a minute. Where is? Oh yeah, this is this one. So we know we get back. Let's see, what was it called? We have a results property, and each result property has a URL here. So results is an array. So I'll move this out of the way for now, but I can look at it. So I know that JSON data, I could say const, I'll call it promises, equals JSON data. And I know there is a results array in there, results, and I can map each result into a promise. I'm going to use our fetch data method, and from the results object, I'm going to use URL. And then I'm going to, for now, I'm just going to console log the results. So I'm going to const results equals promise.all, and then promises. And then I'm going to console log the results. Now I've made a mistake here that is very easy to make. I make it all the time, and that is forgetting to use await here. Yeah, because promise all returns promise. Yeah, that's an easy mistake to make. You'll make it in practice too, forgetting to put await here. So let's go back to the browser. Which one? I think this one. Let's see. Is that correct? Let's open up the console. Console, where are you? So here we get back the result from our second request. It's an array, and these are the results. So this is for Pokemon, the first Pokemon. Now I don't understand anything about Pokemons, but apparently this describes a particular Pokemon. If we go to the source code, and let's put a breakpoint over here, and then we can run through the code. So again, I'm putting the breakpoint at the point of interest, and I'm not getting a breakpoint here. It's not stopping for one reason or another. Oh, now it is. So let's look here. Where can I look? Scope here, scope, JSON data. So can I get rid of this and make this a bit bigger? So we can look at JSON data. So JSON data is this JSON object. We know it has a results array with this information. So results is an array with a name property and a URL property. So here, when we execute the next statement, here, we now have an array here, results. No, not result, not here. Sorry, this one, promises, which are 5 pending promises. It's a pending promise. Yeah, and we are going to pass that to our promise all, and we're going to await the results. Yeah, so if we execute the next statement, now results is the result of promise.all. So it's again an array of the results of each individual promise. So coming back to the question, when can you use, where is the question? The question, what's the difference between sequential and a parallel request? So I think, I'm not sure because Abdurrahman is not here, he's in the other group, but the difference is here, I can't do this
before
this fetch data until I have the information about which URLs to use. So I must do this sequentially. But for when I get back the information, I can do the other requests in parallel because they are not dependent on each other. Yeah, and that's why I can do them in parallel. And if you look in the browser again, here, I think, what was it? Sorry, which browser window? This one. If we look at the network tab, and we only look at I only want to see the fetches that we're doing, and I'm going to reload this. And let's see, we can see here, I guess. Can I make this smaller? Smaller. Waterfall. Waterfall. I can't really see this, but you can see here. It's difficult to see. I don't know how I can increase this, but you can see here that this is the request. So this is sort of a timeline, right? And in this timeline, you can see. Can I see it here? Perhaps I can see it here. No, I don't think so. What am I doing here? What have I done? I've lost the information. Oh, okay. No. Okay, I'm going to reload the page. Where do I do? Okay. So here, in this line, here, this is my initial request for the first URL. And now you can see here I'm making 5 requests here for the second one. You can see these first 4 are sort of done in parallel. See, in the same time scale. And the other one is done somewhat time later. So the browser can do 4 requests in parallel. Chrome, or I'm using actually Edge, can do 4 requests at the same time, in parallel. And the 5th one is done sometime later. So by using promise.all, you sort of you can do things in parallel. Although it has the browser itself has a limit on how many requests it can do in parallel. It's a pity that I can't increase this. Not even if I move this. I can probably stretch it a bit, but I can't. Yeah, you can see it here. So these 4 are sort of like, they all start at the same time, but they get results back. Yeah, at some here at some point later. Okay. Let's get back, and it's now 3 o'clock. So
yeah, because I think waterfall is taking 20 milliseconds. So it's taking the first block at the left from block request, and it's 20 milliseconds above the name.
Above the name. Oh, here. Yeah.
So if this was less than 20 milliseconds, it will be bigger.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure how to interpret this. So I can't make any comments about it. But anyway, I hope you get the idea.
Yeah.
So let's see. I think we need to finish now. Any other? So just quickly. So sequential parallel from George. I don't have questions, but I have difficulties for finding APIs. Well, look in the project GitHub page on the Hack the Future site. There are a couple of links to
APIs.
Yeah, for APIs. Osama. Okay. I'm going to skip that one because you're not going to use XML Http Request in practice anymore. This is old stuff. So fetch was introduced later. Before there was fetch, there was only HTML Http Request, but it's now outdated. You don't need to use it for new code. Okay, then we covered why we need to. Why you need to send a string to a server, because the server, an API, only understands text. You need to send text, and you need to inform the API that the text is to be interpreted as JSON. Okay, we covered the request header, and we covered the question from Daniel and Alex. So guys, I need to wrap up because I need to go to another meeting now with Chebet to evaluate the session. So yeah, I hope it was good for you. I'll share the recording, and I'll also share, I'll commit the latest changes we made in the last hour and update the repo. and send in the recordings to the Slack channel.
Okay,
So-
thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim.
And well, we'll talk again for some of you in my group on the project.
Yeah.
Good luck
Okay.
with that, and good
Thank
luck with
you.
the
Bye.
project too.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice
Bye-bye.
day.